Hello, Covenant Warriors. I wanted to come on today and just share with you guys some of the things that the Lord has been revealing to me through His Word. Every year, I try to read the Bible in a year. It's not always January to December. Sometimes I've done September to September, April to April. This year, I am going January through December. And so, as I'm in the book of Genesis, and reading the story of Jacob, a few things that the Lord had highlighted to me was that Jacob and God had a covenant. God spoke to Jacob and in his sleep, in a dream. And then when Jacob awoke, he said, "If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, then I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and all that you give me, I will give you a tenth." So he made a vow to God saying this, but his vow was very conditional. It was if God is with him in this journey, uh, then Jacob will, say that he is his God. Now, this is right before Jacob goes into Padam Aram, where he meets, Leah and Rachel and all that stuff that happens. And what's fascinating is that moment that vow was made, that covenant was formed, God kept his side of the covenant. God showed up for Jacob, and he helped him navigate through this season of being with Laban and all the things that happened in his life. And so God was with him, and he continued to bless Jacob. And Jacob realized this. He told Laban, "You've been blessed because I've been here. I've been working for you." And even as Jacob is trying to leave Laban, the Lord gives Jacob another dream saying, here are the types of sheep and cattle and goat that you need to separate for yourself. And so he can leave with wealth. Now, what's really fascinating is he ends up fleeing from Laban. And what I wanted to share was that sometimes the way that Jacob behaved, the way he responded to a situation may not have been the best, right? He was very deceitful to Laban, didn't tell him that he was leaving. He just ran away. Then as he goes to meet his brother, he also tells him like, "Yep, you go ahead, I'll be right behind you." But then he goes and settles somewhere else. So there's still this deceitfulness in Jacob that he inherited essentially from his mother, Rachel. But God still shows him favor, and he's still there with him. And so what I wanted to just remind you guys is that if your spouse, if God has a calling on your spouse, which if you're standing for your marriage, I almost guarantee you that he does. Otherwise, the enemy wouldn't be fighting this hard to keep you guys separated and trying to destroy this marriage. And so just having hope and an encouragement that even if your spouse is still behaving the way that they behaved, the characteristics that sometimes make them who they are, like Jacob, his name was jokester. He was a little bit of a deceitful person, and he still is displaying those characteristics even as God is giving him favor and getting him through this. I just want to encourage you that is okay if your spouse is also still doing those things. Like if they're still being maybe a little bit deceitful, maybe not being as honest, but God still has their hand on them. And that's what we just need to trust. And so Jacob finally gets to a point where he meets, he prepares himself to meet Esau, his brother. And then he prays to God and he says, this is after great fear and distress. Jacob, in his great fear and distress, he divided the families, right? And then he prays to God, "Oh God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all kindness and unfaithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but I now have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also my mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. So finally, Jacob is at a point where he is so afraid of going back to the land of his father because of his brother Esau, because of what he did, right? And he finally gets to this point where he surrenders to God and cries out for help. And God did promise that he was going to bring him back and was going to prosper him. But he has this moment of like, he doesn't know if he can trust. And then he recognizes all the things that he's done, right? I'm unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown me. Like he recognizes that his behavior has not always been the best. So, anyways, then what ends up happening. We all know that Jacob wrestles with God, and he gets hit in the hip. But it's at that moment that he receives his new name, and he's blessed there. So, anyways, I just wanted to share that. I think that this was something that God really highlighted to me, that even though Jacob, like I said, was not operating, he was being more transactional with the Lord. Like Jacob was being a lot more transactional with God. And sometimes that transactional nature, that transactional behavior, God is okay with, because God is in the business of relationship. And so he's going to allow those transactional moments to build Jacob's trust in God. So then they can, his relationship with God can evolve from transactional to a truly, you know, um, unconditional relationship, to that covenant where the relationship is more important than the contract that was established. So I just wanted to share that. I hope this blesses someone. And if you're thinking your husband or your spouse is a little bit like Jacob, where you see them behaving in ways that maybe you don't necessarily agree with, or sometimes we might say like, Lord, how do you allow them to get away with this? How are you still blessing them? It's because God has a covenant with them, and he has something for their life, and he's going to ensure that no matter what, that they're still on that path, that they're still inching closer and closer to what God has for them. And so I just encourage you that if you see your spouse in this season having favor, don't be discouraged. That doesn't mean God is approving of their behavior, of their actions. It just means God's showing them faithfulness and kindness as they're still trying to figure out their relationship with God.